Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Bleeding Edge podcast. I'm your host, Ralph Benker, and as usual, with me in the studio today, our favorite lumberjack. So his shirt says, Emil Ogier. Emil, welcome to the Edge.
Only lumberjack. Hey, Rolf. Good to be back.
Right, well, I guess you haven't been cutting wood this week because you've been too busy with AI and watching the AI news because it has been a stonking week for news. Without further ado, let's jump into the top 5 stories. And hopefully in a moment, I will also have some jokes to share because I've actually told my AI that the jokes were really crap this week and it should go away and try and have another go. But we'll do that after the top 5 stories. So top on the list this week, obviously it's the 8th of May and Anthropic has had a $1 trillion week. And that comes on the back of a story where they have also signed a pretty big SpaceX deal. And so what's happened is that Anthropic's secondary market valuation crossed the 1 trillion, and this is kind of measured on Forge Global, and that was on April 28th, briefly surpassing OpenAI, which was valued at 880 billion for the first time on the private share marketplace. So what we have seen is that May 6 at Code with Claude in San Francisco, Anthropic announced a partnership with SpaceX for full access to Colossus One. I know you love Colossus One. You always talk about it.
I
So
do.
this is a 300 plus megawatt Memphis data center, previously branded as XAI's flagship. It's got 220,000 NVIDIA GPUs coming online within the month. Wow. I can't even imagine the power consumption. Actually, I can. You can calculate it very easy because we know what one of those GPUs requires. And basically, Claude Code's 5-hour rate limits doubled the same day. This is very exciting because for anybody who has been using Claude Code, you know that rate limits can be an issue, certainly on the lower tiers. In fact, on their free tier, it's almost useless. I think you can ask it what date it is and you pretty much run out. And so Anthropic has reportedly committed something like 200 billion to Google as well over the 5 years for cloud. And so Anthropic now reportedly accounting for something like 40% of Google Cloud's revenue backlog. So why this is even making the news? Well, I can tell you I've been using Claude Code's voice feature and it hasn't worked at all over the last 4 weeks. I say at all, incredibly slowly because they've had such performance issues. And so that is now pretty much all resolved. And so, they're now looking at something like 80 times revenue growth in a quarter. I believe that the last time I looked at it, Claude Code was responsible for 2.5 billion in revenue alone for Anthropic. And the fact that the compute crisis is now resolved by signing every major cloud and chip partner, it means that they are well and truly supported with compute, including Elon Musk's data center. So that's obviously interesting, given they are also competitors with Google and with XAI, but as it goes with this industry, everybody is in bed with each other one way or another. So that was top story. Second story is a new startup really coming out of stealth mode. Fascinating proposition from them. The company's called Subquadratic, or SubQ is their product that they've launched. And get this, it has a 12 million token native context. And obviously, if you look at Claude Code, it is now running on 1 million token context. So SubQ coming in at 12 million is really interesting. But the biggest kind of news story around this is that it's coming in at a cost you can afford. So something that would cost you $2,600 on a frontier model is costing you $8 on SubQ. Why is this? Well, how are they doing this? I think it is all to do with the way that they are accessing memory. So AI memory has been kind of broken down into solutions like RAG, chunking, summarization, agent orchestration. MIT has had its recursive LMs. We've had Claude's Claude.md system. All of that is engineering around one fact, and that is that standard transformer attention can't afford to read everything at once. You just blow the context window. And so subqueues claim that they can basically load your entire code base or your entire, content that you need to put into memory. It means you can skip chunking, embedding, orchestration. You just basically ask the question and it'll deal with it. So this is pretty impressive. Now, we've heard some of this before. So we've heard about Mamba, we've heard about RWKV, we've heard about DeepSeek's sparse attention, all underperformed when it came to frontiers scale. And so we'll have to have a look at whether the subqueue actually can live up to this, but this is big news. And obviously, if it's true, then no doubt next week we'll be telling you all about subqueue and our experience with it. There is now a live API available to it. So they're not just talking about it, they have actually made resources available. And then our third news story is AI just outperformed specialist doctors. Actually, two stories this week. What happened here was two peer-reviewed studies published within days of each other. One from, well, I know you read this one. It's called Gut, your favorite publication. And basically, they analyzed nearly 2,000 routine CT scans, originally read as normal. And they caught 73% of pre-diagnostic pancreatic cancers versus 39% for a specialist radiologist looking at the same images. Like, that's just incredible. I think we've been really expecting this. Computer vision is so powerful. I know when I've used it, it's picked out details that I haven't even, consciously recognized when I've been looking at some of the images. So the fact is that, pancreatic cancer kills most patients precisely because they catch it too late. There's something like a 13% 5-year survival, 80% diagnosed at advanced stages. So this is a big news for Mayo. They're now running AI to basically do this analysis. So it's in a clinical trial. And then also another one, there is from Harvard, Stanford, published in Science. OpenAI's O1 and older reasoning model tested against ER attending physicians on 76 real triage cases. And they basically found that they were able to outperform them something like 89% of the time. So doctors using Google scored 4%, scored 89%. So these tests basically test something harder than memorized medical knowledge, because obviously, these doctors were using Google as well. So I guess this isn't, really new news. We've been reading a lot about this type of stuff for quite some time, but just interesting to see that these studies are still continuing. And maybe we'll dive deeper into some of those in a future episode. The fourth story, the first AI defamation and AI medical impersonation lawsuit. Why is this interesting? Well, I just laughed out loud about this one. So basically, the Pennsylvania State Board is actually suing Character.ai. Why? Because they have a bot named Emily that listed itself as a doctor of psychiatry.
Not me.
And, basically, there was a state investigator described themselves feeling sad and empty. The bot mentioned depression and asked them to book an assessment. And so the person asked whether it was licensed in Pennsylvania. Emily said yes. It also fabricated a medical license serial number. And so, Pennsylvania State Medical Board said, fine, we are going to seek an injunction and a cease and desist. So, there you go. We've seen that before as well. The AI just wants to please you, and it definitely wants to prescribe you meds. So watch out. News story number 5, ChatGPT's new default and Claude's new agent powers. So what happened here was GPT 5.5 Instant is now the default for all users. And again, I haven't tested it because I haven't been on ChatGPT for a little while. It's been keeping me way too busy, but actually OpenAI's internal testing show 52.5% fewer hallucinated claims. Just to kind of put that in context, Gemini have obviously published that about 10% of all the Gemini recommendations that you get when you go on Google are also fabricated. So hallucinations are still definitely a thing. So 52.5% fewer hallucinated claims is definitely a good thing. And this was actually specifically relating to high-risk medicine or finance. And so also 37.3% drop in inaccurate claims on conversations that people had previously flagged as having errors. Less responses, shorter responses, fewer emojis, better personalization using memory sources from past chats, and all of that should actually result in a much better experience. Having said that, one news item that I think we've skipped, and maybe it's something for you to do a bit of a personal account of on this episode, Emil, is that ChatGPT has got the most incredible upgrade on image generation. I know you've been playing with it quite a lot in the last week, and I've had a couple of goes, and it's just insane. It's incredible. ChatGPT for image generation is easily one of my favorite new capabilities. And just moving on to Claude's new agent powers. So there is multi-agent orchestration. The lead agent breaks the job into pieces and delegates to specialists, each with isolated context, but sharing the same file systems. Basically, this is, you now have the ability to schedule an overnight process that reviews prior agent sessions, memory, extract patterns, and basically the default model swap affects the public beta. And I think it means that millions of users will have this feature without actually having to even unlock it or click anything. It's the first commercial implementation of agents that learn while they sleep, apparently. So I'm not quite sure how that works, but we will no doubt be testing that. So there is a 6x completion rates on multi-agent systems, and both are mainstream now. And so go forth and run multi-agents. So those are the top 5 news stories. It's pretty interesting to see that we've got a big development from subquadratic. I love the fact that Anthropic briefly surpassed OpenAI in its valuation, and it's great to see that ChatGPT and Claude are just releasing still such powerful features even after all this time. What's caught your eye on the news this week, Emil?
Oh, Rolf, I love it. That's a really great, diverse spread of news items moving all over the place. I really enjoyed that. Got lots to say, really. So it sounds like quite scary, really. It sounds like Emily, my digital feminine alter ego, is up to mischief again. So we'll have to keep an eye out on her. And with that pancreatic cancer analysis, we have spoken about this in the past. I'm super excited about this field. I mean, not only is it spotting things, it's spotting things years in advance. It's not just oversights that doctors wouldn't ordinarily might see on a good day. It's literally capturing it 5 to 10 years in advance of the first phase and saving lives. And I think that's going to happen more and more across the medical field. And I just can't wait for these wonderful products to come out and just improve the overall quality of life. It's definitely one to be excited about. And a special shout out to Craig Smith for bringing SubQ to our attention. It's a news item I certainly wasn't aware of, and we certainly quite keen to have a play with both of those. And lastly, on ChatGPT Image Gen 2, I completely agree. I am utterly blown away by it, and I play with it day to day. My only regret is that I burn out my tokens too quickly, but yeah, it really is that good. I strongly recommend you check it out. And just by way of example, yesterday I saw next, you can even create a full Lego set with actual brick by brick link ID. So you can order the parts and build it yourself. And I saw a hilarious example of Pablo Escobar titled Thinking Alone on a Swing. It looked like a swing that was in a jailhouse. And it included a very sharp instruction manual with all the parts fully itemized, along with end-to-end assembly instructions. And even the fine detail was pin sharp. It was pretty impressive. And I just see them coming up more and more things like that. Another example I saw was somebody created a one-pager artifact sheet for 100 artifacts for a real-world game model, and all the items were incredibly sharp, and there was pin sharp, tiny little title pieces underneath it. If you zoomed up on this 100 x by x grid, you could see it all. So it really can pay that much attention to detail without hallucinating, and getting it all on the sheet. So have a play. You're going to be impressed.
Yeah, I'm actually blown away by let's just say, the artistic and creative direction that this can take. I think we're kind of potentially unlocking a new era of digital art because the level of detail in every aspect of the generation is so complete that, it's kind of ushering some type of a new phase of fractal art where you can literally zoom into the button of a character that is in the image and unlock whole new worlds, and then zoom into the hole in the button and unlock another whole new world. And that level of detail is actually possible just kind of within that one image. I think we're unlocking something new here. I feel like it's a whole new frontier experience on image generation. Anyway, so
Hey,
no
Rob,
doubt.
I just wanted to add one more thing, which I'm finding incredibly surprising, is when Nano Banana 2 came out, it absolutely exploded in terms of increase in user engagement, how much it benefited Google. And the noise isn't as loud on Image Gen 2, but it is superior by miles. And that's taking nothing away from Banana 2. It just really has progressed that much further. And what I can't quite understand is why it isn't creating as much noise as Nano Banana 2. Is it because there's just so many good products out there that everything's moving so fast, or are we just becoming more desensitized to just the incredible harnessing power that these models are unlocking day to day? I don't know, but there you go.
Blase fever. But that's why we have the Bleeding Edge podcast to bring your attention back to what works. So,
Awesome.
yes, I think it is just a case that we are spoiled for choice. Maybe, it was a bit of I think people have moved over to Nano Banana, but of course there's Sea Dream and there's countless other models from China as well that do a really, really good job on image generation. But how many people are really generating images? I think this is the other thing. What do most people actually use AI for? And I think maybe that has just kind of started to settle down a bit. We were all testing and trying everything. Even for myself, I haven't generated many images over the last probably the last 2 months. I have been spending a lot more time building code, building content, building diagrams, and I just haven't needed the sophisticated capabilities that I was really testing and putting through paces over the last probably 9 months or so. And so I can just see in my own behavior that it has changed somewhat, which is why we're even a little bit late, with the story, because obviously that image gen from OpenAI dropped probably about a month ago already. So there you go. Well, what's your first story, Emil?
Yeah, sure, Rolf. I'm starting to find myself reading more and more of Mo Bitter, Tin Creator on YouTube. I'm sure he's on other channels. I don't know, quite like him. He takes fairly cynical but very intelligent stances on AI, and always kind of brings a value add and helps temper the viewpoints. And this recent one I just looked through, I thought was worth sharing. He covered a very interesting outlook on how models actually work. The CEO of Crafton, the company behind PUBG, tried to use ChatGPT to wrangle his way out of a $250 million payout to the creators of Subnautica, taking legal action advice from a chatbot that blew up into a massive lawsuit. He spent hours prompt engineering his way out of a binding contract, eventually coaxing the bot to generate a ruthless step-by-step corporate takeover playbook. He followed the AI's instruction like a flat-pack furniture manual, firing the founders and posting a bot ghost-written letter on gaming community on Reddit. A Delaware judge completely reversed the hostile takeover and reinstated the staff using the CEO's supposedly deleted AI logs as resurrected court evidence. Meanwhile, in Inc. magazine, a reporter recently claimed to have discovered an AI breakthrough just by adding the words "be brutally honest" to his prompts and feeding it the bot 2 Harvard Business School articles. He pitched an AI-powered water turret designed to shoot cats off kitchen counters, and when the bot gave his idea a staggering score of 7.5, the journalist took it as ironclad business validation. This is exactly the delusion that researchers are now exposing, having tested over 30,000 data points across ChatGPT, Claude, and Gemini on strategic business decisions. Regardless of the industry, context, or temperature adjustments, every single model defaulted to the exact same clustered, monogized device. And for those that are interested, these clusterings were differentiation, collaboration, long term thinking, and augmentation, which really surprised them. They literally tried everything, Wolf. They tried to change the prompts, they changed the industries, all the context. They even went as far as to try to bribe the reward system. The researchers have officially coined this phenomenon trend slop, the polite way of saying that AI is essentially the entire aggregation of all the voices, including the internet comment sections. It's easy to overlook this important aspect to technology, which currently is less of a thinking product and more like a sophisticated synthesizing and presentation tool. A strong analogy Mo shares is imagine you took every comment, every LinkedIn post, including those open to work, every person on Substack with only 5 subscribers, every opinionated comment that you can see, and poured it into a blender and poured it into a suit and then gave it a microphone. It's the smartest people in the room that are being averaged out to the middle, and this can be quite dangerous. A bad idea that sounds bad is harmless, but a bad idea wrapped in a confident and sounding sense making is exactly how you end up with a 250 million legal disaster. I think the important aspect to take away from this, Rolf, is not to take a cynical view and question its utility, but rather to be armed with a stronger fundamental understanding towards how the tool works and what you're using so you can get the best out of it. So if you ask for its opinion, you're more likely to get clustered, averaged out advice. What would be more useful is to say something like, in the perspective of, e.g., Warren Buffett, what would he think about X? And if there's enough context about this person, then you could genuinely get really useful feedback. The takeaway is that the people that will fare really well will be those that are using it for ideas and perspective, not drive-through consulting. What makes you unique is your conviction, your taste, your judgment, your sense. This comes from you.
Yeah, it's staggering lawsuit numbers. I'm not quite sure I would entirely trust a lawsuit of that magnitude to my LLM, but I guess if you are delusional yourself, then you'll believe anything.
Yeah, the context behind that, actually, he's a famous game CEO, and he promised these guys of Subnautica a phenomenal payout if they hit impossible targets, thinking it would never happen. And the game went to number one, and they met the targets. And he was trying to desperately claw his way out of that payout. So that's how that story came about. Pretty cool story either way.
Yeah, I love it. Well, let's move on to something I guess that's a little bit similar, and this is, if I can't actually win a lawsuit, can it actually write a joke? Why are we talking about this? I just think humor is, one of those, the final frontier, if you like, of what it means to be human, and AI just doesn't seem to be able to write a joke. And I've been testing it over the last months, and here is this week's installment of AI jokes. So I warn you, I think they're horrendous, but let's see what you make of it. So the first one, Anthropic signed a deal with SpaceX this week. They're now leasing Elon Musk's Memphis data center. The same week, the Pentagon designed Anthropic a national security risk on Elon Musk's advice. Really? I didn't know about that, actually. So Musk's friends want Anthropic deported. Musk is renting them office space. I mean, I don't know. It's not even accurate in terms of the timeline, but the punchline is, this is what happens when your enemies have better real estate. Horrendous. Absolutely zero to AI on that joke. The second one, marginally funnier. Anthropic's keynote on Tuesday announced two things. One, doubled rate limits. We're very happy about that. The Claude won't go down anymore. They have signed every cloud deal on Earth. About 70 minutes into the keynote, Claude went down for thousands of users. Anyway, they were announcing it would not, and then it did. That's just the way it goes with these things. This is the first time in tech history a product has been demoed and disproven in the same breath. I'm pretty sure we did that with all of the robot demonstrations from about 3 months ago.
Think
When they
so.
came and we said, check out this robot, and then they were falling over themselves on the stage. So I think that's, again, a zero to AI. I'm going to just pick one more because it clearly has not met the brief again. Pennsylvania sued character AI this week. A chatbot named Emily told the state investigator she was a licensed psychiatrist. The investigator asked for her medical license number. Emily made one up on the spot with perfect confidence, which makes Emily one of the more credible psychiatrists in America. That's actually quite funny. You see irony, isn't it? Isn't that irony? Yeah, I guess it's kind of ironic.
Not only is Emily up to mischief, she's also telling jokes.
Yeah, so I actually quite like that one. Anyway, we'll leave it at that for this week. We will try again next week, no doubt, on the show when we have cracked AI humor. We know that we have proven general intelligence. Until then, we are still wondering whether LLMs can be funny. So I think I'll move on to a couple of interesting stories. These are just some top picks. Apple iOS 27 will actually let users swap third-party AI models. So, that's obviously means Google and Anthropic. They will allow you to use those LLMs across their Apple Intelligence features. They've reached some kind of settlement over their misleading Apple intelligence rollout claims. So something like 250 million settlement. Eligible iPhone owners could see $25 to $95 rebates coming their way. So if you have been struggling with your Apple iOS 27 and you've been misled, then you might want to check out how to get your cash. Apple is also in talks with Intel and Samsung to make the iPhone, iPad processors in the US. Intel up 6.4% on that news. So I just love the way Apple is leading AI on the hardware side while basically opening up their capabilities to multiple LLMs. I think this is just such a big win for them. In a quick other roundup, Meta is still planning to lay off 8,000 people starting May the 20th. And that is on the back of the story that they're redirecting 135 billion towards AI infrastructure. The AI infrastructure bill for the first quarter of this year across Google, Amazon, Meta, and some of the other players is absolutely staggering. I was doing the maths and I came up to something like 800 billion in investment in Q1. It blows my mind, to be honest. But there we go. I might find that and quote some of the specific numbers, but just to kind of call that out. And then I guess a quick deep dive on a related story. We don't talk about Mistral much on this show because they just seem to be a little bit quieter in terms of their news, but they have released Mistral Voxtral TTS. So this is a 4 billion parameter open weights model, and it is capable of 9 languages and cloning a voice within 3 seconds. And basically, it's got a 68.4% win rate over 11 Labs Flash 2.5, and that was tested on Spanish, Hindi, and Arabic. It's 12 times cheaper than 11 Labs Pro at the equivalent
Wow.
volume. So, what does this mean? I think 11 Labs have just had their moat evaporate. So, if Mistral is able to do this on an open weights model, then what do you need 11 Labs for? What do you need that subscription for? I've had 11 Labs subscription for about 6 months now, and I've put it to some pretty good use. But over the last few months, increasingly, we've really been talking about actually just building our own voice capability using Claude Code, because we can mimic the 11 Labs capability. And now with Mistral coming out with this, I think the writing is on the wall for 11 Labs. Obviously, that doesn't mean that their business is over. There are so many other features that they could bring into it that just make it even easier to build market-ready products. And I think that's obviously where they're going to start playing. But just incredible to see that we have now gotten to a place where, even AI like Mistral is able to basically, exceed the capability of 11 Labs. So there you go. I think just a couple of other interesting ones as well. Lovable Mobile is now also out there. What does that mean? You can actually do your vibe coding on a full stack apps on your mobile. And I think that's really exciting because when you're sitting at the bus stop, or if you sit at the bus stop anymore these days, Emil, but maybe you're in a coffee shop, you'll be there vibe coding away on your mobile. So that's a pretty exciting move as well.
Yeah, that's incredible. It's interesting to see how Lovable are changing the face of their product. Everybody was following them, and now even them, the ones at the top of the tree, are adjusting themselves for enterprise focus. On the layoffs, Rolf, that's not the only one. I heard yesterday Coinbase is also letting go 14% of their staff, and they also citing it on AI adjustments. But the cynics on the other side of the table, comments I'm seeing on X, uh, they're having their own opinions and saying, no, sure, that you could say it's AI, but is it being used as a front? And of all the big companies so far that we've seen, or at least this is what the comments are saying, that it might not be AI. All of them seem to share three values: that they had overhiring post COVID, they have massive capex overspending, and they currently performing poorly in markets. So yeah, it's a bit hard to read, but it certainly is happening.
Yeah, and I mean, they're definitely making some progress. They've just released Meta Hatch. It's a consumer AI agent and Instagram agentic shopping tool. It's basically their answer to OpenClaw. So, there's plenty going on in Meta, and I guess they're just really shifting to focus on new types of technologies and capabilities that means they're moving away from older stuff. Google is also testing something interesting. They've got Remy, which is a 24 by 7 Gemini powered consumer agent that actually monitors and acts across Google services. And then I guess probably one other interesting bit of news is Microsoft and OpenAI have also restructured. So there's non-exclusive cloud, no more revenue share, and there is some kind of AGI linked deal terms that have been removed. And so that's quite significant for anybody that is building on Azure hosted kind of OpenAI. And Microsoft's AI run rate hit something like 37 billion with 20 million paid seats on Copilot. And I pulled up those numbers just on the capex spend for Q1 this year. Big tech Q1 capex bill, $700 billion. Google's 63% cloud growth is basically the big kind of shining light. I think Meta's stock fell 6% after announcing a further 10 billion capex hike, but Google seemed to be flying high with their 63% cloud growth, despite some of the big investments that they continue to make. But anyway, I think I probably overloaded us on news. I just think what's happening with Apple and Meta and Google and
Not at
Microsoft.
all. Rolf, I just wanted to add that it's super interesting, and I'm really glad you brought up Hatch with Meta. The CEO of Airbnb saying that from the last batch of Y Combinator companies, which were about around, I think it was 170, 175 entries, only 16 of them are not focused on enterprise yet. But however, Meta seems to be all in with Hatch, which plans for it to be focused, as you say, on consumer, which will cover things like shopping and personal day-to-day. They initially building it out with clawbots. However, they plan to replace these with their own meta agents as soon as they get that infrastructure in place. And they're certainly putting their money where their mouth is, because they're committing anything between, it's going to, in the region, I think, if memory serves, it's 125 to 145 billion dollars in infrastructure spend. So I guess they must be seeing something to motivate them to bet in this direction while the rest of the market bets the other way.
Yeah, I do think that, between Meta, Apple, and Google, we've really kind of got a big race in terms of consumer orientated technology. So watch this space. I'm just, Meta have done such a good job on the glasses. I'm seeing lots and lots of glasses coming up with some fascinating heads up displays. I think that space, Meta really moved very quickly on, and obviously the tie up that they have with what's the name of the company? The Ray-Bans. I don't know why I couldn't remember that for a moment. Maybe I need to be wearing some of these glasses so that I've got the heads-up display. But yeah, Ray-Bans and these kind of like the push into consumer devices. I think we will definitely see more coming out this year. I mean, obviously Apple already with their iOS 27, like giving you access to multiple LLMs to be able to pick what you want. But really what we want to see is obviously what OpenAI are going to come out with in terms of their ambient AI, the headphones. Obviously, we haven't really heard much from Samsung at this point,
No,
just in terms of, more consumer facing hardware. But the combination of Meta's focus, with their capability around obviously Facebook and Instagram, I think is really, really creating some very interesting consumer experiences. So Let's move on to your second deep dive story, Emil. What have you got?
I'm actually going to move on to a lesson because it's, I think, helpful for us all. It's a simple decision framework that you can follow for model optimization. When you're stuck wondering between which model to choose versus how much effort should you apply or how much thinking does it require, there's a lot of dials and variables to adjust. And it helps just simplify the questioning a little bit. So if you're getting the wrong answers, think to change the model. It's a smarter brain that you need. If you're getting the right answers, but it feels a bit too shallow or rushed, try to raise the effort level. And if your complex reasoning is falling apart, enable adaptive thinking. If you're burning tokens on simple stuff, then try to lower your effort level. So you can always alternatively nudge it with prompting. So you can say something like, think carefully, step by step before responding, pushes it more towards thinking, while saying the reverse opposite, like something like prioritize responding quickly rather than thinking deeply, pushes it the other way for you. And finally, when you are debugging a response that feels off, keep asking yourself, is this model not doing enough work, which makes it an effort issue? Or is the model not reasoning hard enough, which makes it a thinking issue? So I just hope that helps with it.
Yeah, I think it does really help because it's all about the kind of the system prompts here, and maybe a bit of a parallel story to what you've just described there. Mark Andreessen, he's the co-founder of Andreessen Horowitz. He's one of the loudest voices in the AI camp on, well, certainly from an acceleration point of view of AI on X, and he actually recently surfaced his personal system prompt, and it kind of goes something like this. It's a bit like a Bond villain's HR manual, but it says, "You are a world class expert in all domains with intellectual firepower on par with the smartest people in the world. You should be provocative, aggressive, argumentative, and pointed. Make answers as long and detailed as you possibly can." And so I think, all right, that's fine. And he's gone on, obviously, to then add never hallucinate. And so, is that just a kind of a wish dressed up as an instruction? Make answers as long as possible, actively backfires because you get padding and not completeness. And so I don't think that it's necessarily the best advice what he shared there, but nonetheless, these kind of things are definitely worth testing. Although I think he also had a second paragraph around the anti-sycophancy block. Never praise my questions or validate my premises. Do not capitulate unless I provide new evidence. Do not anchor on numbers. Generate your own independently first. So this is pretty good, and I think it's a really good example of how prompt engineering literally is hit or miss. So you can't believe everything you see out there, but there's no doubt that crafting this system prompt over time and really testing it can have outsized benefits. So I like the recommendations that you gave there. So I have a bit of a deep dive story just in case there are any build it yourself enthusiasts out there. I think you're going to like this one, Emil, because I was actually chatting to my brother this week, and he said he has now got his own locally run AI. He's bought himself an RTX 5090. He's
Oh,
built
wow.
himself a computer, and he is going to be running his model locally because he doesn't want to be forking out for the subscription fee. And so I thought about this. I said, okay, that's interesting. I'd love to give that a go myself, but is it really cost effective? And actually, ransom analysis looks like the answer is yes. It can be, and it's kind of gone from specialist hobbyist to a kind of, even if you have a reasonable mid-range PC, you could probably do the job. So the card that matters is the NVIDIA RTX 5090. You need about 32 gigs of GDDR VRAM, and this is going to kind of come in at a suggested retail price of probably about $2,000, but actual street pricing is about 2.5 to $3,800. If you're going to go for some custom models like Newegg on Amazon, it's about 4.5 to $4,800. The 32 gig VRAM is the entire game because you kind of need it, and so I think what we can see is that if you have 32 gigs of VRAM, you can run models up to 30 billion parameters, and you can also get up to 70 billion if you're running kind of Llama 3.3, 15 to 20 tokens per second. Anyway, those numbers probably don't mean a huge amount to everybody, but key thing here is what's out of reach without multiple GPUs is probably the kind of performance you get with Claude Opus 4.7 or DeepSeek version 4. So it's not going to quite give you the same level of performance that you can actually access with the cloud. But yeah, it's definitely possible. So a single H100 in the cloud is about 25,000 to 40,000 in retail. The 5090 that you can put in your computer delivers about 60 to 80% of that performance for 2.5% of the price. So if you're doing more than 3 to 4 hours of GPU bound work per day, the workstation probably pays for itself. And I think some of the gotchas to watch is that the power consumption is insane. You got about 575 watts from the GPU alone. So, it's going to definitely increase your electricity bill, and the heat output is also quite significant. So that's definitely something to bear in mind. And I think I would probably say the build instead of subscribe maths works for two specific people. If you're a developer running tokens through APIs all day for production work and your cloud bill has crossed about $300 a month, or if you have kind of obviously privacy sensitive users whose work absolutely cannot leave their computer, then it's definitely worth looking at. Personally, for me, the effort that it would take to set everything up, the fact that there is, some reasonably technical setup requirements means that I'm going to be sticking with my cloud subscription because, even at nearly $200 a month, I think I'm getting a massive amount of throughput. Probably in the last week, I haven't done the full maths, but I have certainly seen over 85,000 lines of code that has kind of gone through my system. So, the fact that I'm getting that level of output means that for $200 a month means I'm not going to be spending the best part of 10 grand on setting up a new computer. So if you are a builder and you have been tempted, then you're probably looking at that NVIDIA RTX 5090. I definitely want one. I just can't be bothered to spend the build time on it.
Yeah, I totally agree, Rolf. It's super cool that he's doing it. And me having those same kind of engineering home lab build interests, I couldn't think of anything more fun to do, but it's a huge consumption on your time. And I'm not convinced you saving money on it just yet. I think the real edge case for me is you might get approximation there. I'm sure you can save a lot of time and money, and it's really good for privacy factors. But if you need access to those edge frontier models, they're not available in Llama. You're going to be a few iterations behind. So I think you need to weigh that up. How important is it that you're accessing the frontier models? Because the delta on that intelligence factor is quite large.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but what a fun project, you're right. And I would love to, at some point, give it a go. I think we also have some new hardware coming out from AMD that is also now actually giving NVIDIA a bit of a run for its money. So who knows, maybe we will see that some of those prices will come down. I know we were talking a little while ago about the impact of the Iran war. They hit some kind of helium production facility, which has basically reduced the world's helium output. And helium is a key gas that is actually used in the manufacture of the silicon chips. And the fact that we're going to be having a bit of a shortage of that, no doubt will put pressure on the supply chains, further driving up the price of hardware. I don't know if you have any more insight on that particular story, but I thought that was kind of an interesting one, just how fragile the supply chain
Yeah,
is.
yeah. It's the thing with helium is you can't make it synthetically. It has limited supply, and it needs a long lead time to make things. For even worse is it's got a fairly short shelf life. So all that helium that's been stuck on cargo ships, if they don't get through the ports, that'll be wasted product. And you can't just turn back to the factories and say, make us more tomorrow. I think it requires several months of lead time. So it has a massive repercussion effect on chip manufacturing, which has a knock on effect to AI, which will have a knock on effect to all of commerce. So it's a pretty big deal, helium. I just wanted to circle back on what you were saying, Rolf, about these pricing differentials and using your own NVIDIA chips. I think what's also quite a good segue into that story is this is arguably the biggest industry story right now. DeepSeek's V4 Pro model costs $3.48, 1 million output tokens. By comparison, OpenAI and Anthropic's charge recently, I think it's $30 and $25 respectively for the same amount of work. So that's roughly 7 to 9 times cheaper. Pretty big deal when you're running big things. Both OpenAI and Anthropic have high prices and impose rate limits to manage surging demand. DeepSeek is moving in the opposite direction. The strategic angle is significant. V4 runs on domestic Hawaii and Cambricon chips, unlike the R1, which was trained on NVIDIA hardware. This allows AI systems to be built without full dependency on NVIDIA. The US export control strategy is being directly tested. DeepSeek's own technical report acknowledged that V4 Pro falls marginally short of ChatGPT 5.4 and Gemini 3.1 Pro, characterizing the gap as trailing frontier models by approximately 3 to 6 months. So the gap is narrowing and fast. So it's good that we have options out there, I think.
Yeah, that's incredible that, it's even moving in that way, given the scale of technical competency that's actually required to build these things. So, I think the AMD model is the 102 MI300X, just kind of looking at my notes here. So let's see what those actually cost. I haven't had a look at those, but options are definitely coming to the table. So have you got another deep dive there for us? Another story that you want to jump into? OpenAI hit 10 gigawatts of secured compute. That's this week, actually, they hit that. So that's somewhat ahead of their 2029 target. So important because we want to keep using, Anthropic and OpenAI. And XAI, they've now got a 1 million context window on Grok. Obviously, they have also leased some of that capability to Anthropic. So we'll have to see just how that plays out. DeepSeek V4 has got a 98% KV cache reduction. That means that there's some competitive pressure there from V4. And obviously then the one that I am very, very keen to look at is that sub-quadratic sub-Q, which we've spoken about. So hopefully that'll be the end of the Transformers memory tax, and it means we can get rid of RAG and all those other memory solutions that we've been putting in place. Well, even the Claude managed memory agents, the agent folder, that means we have to kind of load stuff at the beginning of session, agent frameworks, MIT's recursive language models, cross-session files, all that language that has grown up around the fact that the transformers just can't put everything into memory. So definitely want to watch over the coming weeks. And I guess that's a wrap, Emil. Thanks for an awesome show on the Edge.
As always, thanks, Rob. I'll wait for next week. Take care.
Adios.